All right, so I'm the final video. I think we could probably get this done. Let's do our normals. Right, so we've made this levels here. I'm going to bring down a transform 2D, and I'm going to, I think I'm going to make this a little bit finer. But again, you can keep it the same. I'm just following what I did with my notes. I think well, clearly I did it because I ended up thinking it was better this way. Um, and so this is what we're going to end up doing now. I'm going to bring down a normal here. And we're making kind of a grainy overlay. Since we weren't really concentrating on it too much, I think now I know why. I think it gave it a little bit of sort of extra sort of depth, parallaxy kind of thing because the colors weren't quite matching up. I thought it did a better job. But we're going to end up overlaying this onto a normal that we're going to make out of, oh, let's set this first to fill alpha with input. And let's get another normal here. And we're going to need a grayscale conversion because what we're going to do is we're going to take our final color here and we're going to use this, a grayscale version of this color to do our normals. Now, you can, I mean, this is only one way of doing it. Again, I'm coming down here, I'm going to fill the alpha with input because I can't seem to get it to work properly in Unity if I force the alpha to 1. I'm not entirely sure why. We're going to take this grayscale, we're going to take this normal color and we're going to put it in there instead. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take my original ledge mask and I'm going to put it in here. So what ends up happening, oh yeah, let's bump this up a little bit. It's very low right now. So let's make this, I don't know, 10. It might be a little high, but, and this we definitely want higher. Oh, what am I doing? Oh yeah, that is, I want this definitely higher. I thought I was in the grain there. I want that high. And I want, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. This. No, I'm going to, I was right the first time around. I'm going to do this. I want this at the correct resolution, which is why I couldn't see anything. And now I want to cut out the areas underwater. I don't want them to be nearly, I want them to be smoother. So I'm on purpose cutting out, using the ledge mask, the areas in the water. And instead, I'm going to put another blend here. I'm going to have this bumpy sort of overall grain normal is going to lie over everything because we're just going to put an overlay here with no mask at all. But in the areas where you have water, I think that's a little much. I think I'm going to bring down the opacity just a tad. So you begin to see an area where the rock on top is going to be bumpier than the areas that are underwater because, you know, the water is kind of smooth that stone down just a little bit. And this will be our new normal mask. Oh, but not quite yet. That's just the ground. The one thing we haven't put in here, and we're going to put it in last, is our animated water from the original material we made. And the reason, again, why I'm putting it in last is because of performance. This is something that's got an animation. It's got more stuff going on than your average node. It's got calculations happening, and it's got potentially exposed parameters. And I want it to happen as close to my end result as possible. So here's my water. Oh, yeah, I just want the normals. I'm not going to be putting this height map, I'm not going to be using that because we don't want that giant wave roll that we had put in. So we're just going to use the normal map, and we're going to cut out again according to the inverted because we want to see that. And we now have, oh, I just did that wrong. We want that to be on our tide line. We want it to match this. Except we want to have that inverted. So what we need to do is go to our library and bring down an invert grayscale. And that is what we want to use for our water. So as we move that tide line, the water is going to recede, and it's going to leave the stuff underneath exposed. So that should now work for us once we've plugged it in to our node. Let's publish it out and see if that's true. Yeah, there's something going on with that foam we're going to have to take a look at, but our water is animated. It's moving around. Our foam's moving around. Our foam's moving too fast for that water. But things are working and things are moving. So that's good. Let's get our roughness map sorted out, and then we'll see what we can do about that foam. So let's move these guys back a little bit, make some room in here. I'll put that with my normals. This I'm just going to dock. This I'm also just going to dock. We're going to draw a frame around this. We're going to call that normals. Oops. Normals. And we just need to do our roughness map. You know, this is getting very crowded. I'm just going to take all this and just move it forward a little bit. I did a very basic roughness map. And, well, for that matter, I also did a very basic normals map. You can get as involved with these things. You can go ahead and make a separate whole set of nodes that will handle it much in the same way that we handle the color and all the other stuff. This is, again, this is just one way of doing it. I was trying to, I redid this material this way because I was trying to be super lean with it, and I liked the way it ended up. So I stuck with it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is the same thing I did with the normals, and that's work this off of my final color. So I'm bringing down my final color and I'm turning it into a grayscale. Now with my roughness, my black areas are going to be shiny and my white areas are going to be the roughest. I want what's black on here, I actually want to be the roughest areas. So before I do anything else, I'm going to invert this grayscale so that I'm dealing with something more of what it is that I want for a roughness map. So at this point, I'm really adjusting for, I mean, I've already got my whitest whites. They're not going to get any whiter than they already are. And this leaves me free to fool around with the levels of the stuff that's not white. So the tops of my, and I kind of want it that way. The tops of my, I want these cracks to be kind of the shiniest of all my stuff. And then the recesses of whatever kind of stone it is will always be the roughest of anything. So those are the deep crevices within the striations. Which, by the way, were looking really flat to me. Before we expose this out, I really want to kind of mess around with since I've got this here, I want to mess around with these warps. Because they were looking very straight. And I was not liking that. And maybe we can mess around with that one as well. Yeah, that's better. What does it look like? Let's see what happens if we take this down a notch. Nope. Okay. Right, well, you can always go back on your own map. I'm not going to waste time on it now, but you can always right click, open reference, and you can start messing around with all the stuff in here to get that how you want it. I mean, you can spend a lot of time on these things. Right, so let's get back to where we were. We had the levels set up. This is looking bendier. I'm liking that a little bit more. And that's pretty much our rocks done until at least we start to fine tune it. What we haven't dealt with is what's going to happen with this shoreline as that map comes out. Now, I don't want to have it be completely white. It kind of doesn't make sense. It makes a lot more sense to have it, because it's a little bit wet, right? Because it's just been exposed by water. So it makes a lot more sense to have it some color slightly darker than white. I'm going to take just this you can't do that. I'm going to take just this grayscale map from my tide line. I'm going to go into the levels. I'm going to take the whole thing and I'm just going to gray it down some so that it's not purely white. And then if we overlay these two, actually no, I think I had it, yeah, no, I overlaid. No, I multiplied. Might have to go back to my notes. Let's see if that works. Hold on a second, let me check. That's why it looked wrong. Yeah, I didn't multiply it. I left it as a copy, and I masked it with our original ledge. Because what that allows us to do is to keep this original color, because if you multiply it over this, it's going to pick up this darker gray, so you can never get this pure white. What we've done here is I should probably bring up the resolution. We've kept this exactly, by using a copy, we've kept this exactly the same way it is. And then if we go into our input parameters and take a look at that tide line, we've masked out the land, and now as we move the tide line up, that moves in, but it maintains that gray underneath. So this is a very basic roughness map. You, if you so choose, can get more complicated with it, but I've kind of got a cartoony look going on here, so I'm going to keep it very simple. And then the last thing I did, oops, that was not right. This is roughness. The last thing that I did was I like to have a little metal in my stone. that's just me. In fact, we might have even a little bit less. And I think it just adds a little bit more, I don't know, pizzazz. But I mean, like really a little bit, because it's not really metallic stone. But you know, stones very often have like sort of small bits of ore in them that we can't really see, and I think it kind of gives it a bit of a sheen. But you know, it's like really minimal. And I believe that is, oh, you know what, let's see what we can do about this foam before we publish it out, which I didn't really like very much. Where are we? Could it be because of this blur? Let's see if that is our problem. Well, there's only one way to find out. Okay. So the stone, I mean, I would spend more time messing around with it uh, to suit my own taste. But again, this is something that is a very personal, um, you know, your material is your material. I do like what's going on with this is all that warp underneath. So that I like that effect that it was giving me. The one thing that I'm not totally satisfied with this rock here is these striations. Um, the thing to do with these, I think, is to go back. Well, you know, one thing we can do, let's take a quick look and see whether we can't use the parameters we've already got set within the stratified rock. Actually, no, within this one to maybe make those edges a bit, I think the which one we've got, the stratified rock is, yeah, it's this mid one. So let's smooth that out a little bit. I think I'll be happier because hopefully I did that right. I want this edge smooth. No, I did the wrong one. Let's do the other one now. That edge is very hard. Yeah. Anyway, you can, now it's too soft. I say you can do it yourself and then I end up doing it because I can't help myself. What's going on? I don't see a difference. Yeah, well, you could. This is the part that takes hours. You're going in. You're looking at your gradient. You're adjusting all your colors. You're fooling around with all this stuff. But this is your basic setup right here. And let's just see and make sure everything works correctly. That foam's a bit better, but not really. What can we do to it? You know what? Let's see if we up the resolution a bit, whether it'll help us out. I don't know if that's going to do it, but we can put a noise upscale and see if I am happier with that. Yeah, I think that's better. Yeah. So we can also, because we've put our colors and our heights, we've kind of synced them together. We can also change the colors somewhat by dealing with our depths and our heights. So I'm going to start with my strata here, and I'm going to make that my highest because that's kind of how I had it planned. So there they are. And then my depth, oh, I'm going the wrong way. If I want it less, ooh, yeah, it's lagging behind. Yeah, so we set, no, it is 0, okay. Oh, that's our normals, so we've got a little bit of normal going there. I want it kind of like that. And then the next level, I think we want the cracks. So I'm going to bring those up. Now notice as I bring them up, that color is going to change according to what my gradient is. And this is where the kind of pain in the butt part comes in, because you can literally spend hours just working on these gradients. But it's a really powerful tool because it gives you a lot of variety in how you set up your colors. You can also, if you don't want to have to deal with this mess, I think I mentioned before, you can have it where you set this up so it's not corresponding to your colors. I mean, it's following the same principles. First of all, I'm gonna shut this off. It's not making my life easier. So we had the strata set up pretty high. And I'm going to change that depth a little bit. Yeah, they were looking very stripy to me. I'm going to kind of dull them down. Then we're going to play with our cracks. I want to actually bring those up a little bit. You see, it's so I'm not, if I find a height that I like and it's not giving me the color that I like, let me get this depth set up the way I want it first. It's being kind of laggy. I'm going to have to go back to my gradient now, and I'm going to have to find that spot. And I'm going to have to change it in here. So it's kind of a drag. I mean, we're already at like half an hour. I'm just going to find a color I like right now with this one because, so I found, oh, I just passed through a spot that we found a green spot. So we're actually moving through the green. This is a good example. It's a good way to show you what the gradient's doing. There. Okay. That's tolerable. And then we can do the same thing with the volcanic rock. And we can play with its depth. And again, that's going to affect it's going to change the colors because we're changing the black and white value of that map. So I think that's okay. I'm not thrilled with what's going on with my gradient, but we really didn't spend much time on it. When I did the sample, I literally spent probably an hour just fiddling with just the gradient. Probably more if you count both gradients together, because that's really where the secret sauce is when it comes to doing these. But otherwise, it's working. So, at this point, I think you've got enough information to make this, your own map. And again, the principles here apply to everything else that you do. So, today it's rocks, tomorrow it can be something else. And you can take materials that you've made in previous iterations and go ahead and reuse them. You know, because we just saved having to make a brand new water because we had already made a water, and this is these white pieces notwithstanding, which I hate. It looks fairly decent. You know, spend another couple hours on this gradient and, you know, it'd look really, really, really good. So I think that's it for this video. Not quite sure what I'm going to do next, but if anybody has any suggestions, I'm always happy to hear them, and I'll see you next time.